Yeah. I tried to pick us a beautiful place to be at today, so we're in the mountains like Jesus, and we're going to have a really good teaching today. So, wouldn't that have been cool to be there when he did his first sermon?
I'm glad I'm here now.
Me too. But it would have been neat.
It would have been neat.
So, hi Glenda, glad you're here today. Hope you guys got all the rain we got yesterday. We had probably 3 months worth of rain in one night. It was amazing. I just need to figure out how to get my dog to calm down. When thunderstorms start, she's on my head, just right in there on my bed, sitting on my head. It's crazy. Hi Esther, good morning. Hector. All my Ecclesia students are popping on. I like being able to see who comes on when they start watching. It's pretty cool. Hey Dan. Sometimes somebody comes in that doesn't want me to know they're on there. So, not too much though. So, all right, we're going to start, and I appreciate all of you being here, and everybody's going to watch later on. Hi, Norma. Carl's been looking for you, so you might want to get in the car and head over here real quick. So, but we're starting chapter 2 now. So we went through chapter 1. You know, I didn't think it was too quick. I think 3 lessons for chapter 1. And in this section of our study, we're going to follow Jesus' mission and mandate and ministry, studying one of what I think people wrongly call miracles. I've said this most of my life, or not most of my life, but my ministry, hi Kay, and my ministry, and I've always thought that the things that we call miracles should be just everyday occurrences, and it shouldn't be a miracle. And I think because for so many years, hundreds and hundreds of years, the church has called things miracles. And then in the Catholic religion, one of the things that they qualify to call somebody a saint is they worked a miracle or did something like that. But we're learning today that we're spiritual. And so nothing really is a miracle. It's supposed to be happening constantly. And the spiritual, a sign is commonly defined as an extraordinary event or a sign. And so we're going to be looking at these as signs, and a sign points you to something. And what they point you to in these instances are the divinity of Jesus Christ and his connection with his divine mind. And so there are things that are to be considered because they're caused by the divine. They are supernatural as far as they're other than just physical, you know. But they're supernatural understandings. That's what they are. And they can't be explained by carnal laws or of just nature itself, but it's seen as an event perceived to wonder at or to marvel about how it reveals a great truth. And as I studied this today, we're going to be talking about Jesus being invited to a wedding, and it really opened my eyes to something that it really excited me about, and we'll get there and I'll talk about it. But these occurrences can be viewed as natural outcomes when individuals are in tune with their spiritual selves, when they're in tune to the divine mind. You know, we can say Father, the divine mind, she, source, whatever, but it's our spiritual self. It's who we really are. Yes. And when you're in tune with who you are, then you're going to function properly. I'm just thinking right now about a piano. If it's out of tune, and you get on there and play it, that's not its true self. It may look like a piano, it may feel like a piano, but it's not really the true. It's not the true. And so we're going to read from in verses. I'm thinking about reading all the verses first. Well, I won't, but we're going to go through 1 through 5. Then we're going to end up in verse 11. And Canaan is the place that he went, Canaan of Galilee. And I looked up Canaan, and its Greek name is from the Hebrew. It means reeds, it means reed, it means cane, it means staff, it means spear, it means measuring rod, rule, and it means balance. Did you get one of your note things?
Nope,
right there they are. And it means balance. So in our visible spirit, Canaan is symbolized by our larynx, if you would. You know, I've talked about the divine faculties, all the divine faculties to man, and they're all represented by the different disciples. But so therefore, Cana is the power center of our consciousness, if you would. So when we are in a state of balance, our balanced spiritual energy, which that's what Canaan represents, we can move beyond the outward force of our subconsciousness, because if not, then what's in our subconsciousness will hinder us. And that's why we're always, Paul said, I would do good, but I would do bad because there's sin in my members. He's talking about there's a mistaken identity in my subconsciousness, or there's the law, or whatever I fed on it over and over and over, and as much as I like ice cream, I do admit that probably one of the reasons I enjoy it so much is because I talk about it a lot. So I plant it into my subconsciousness. So when I don't feel good, one of the first things I think I need is ice cream. It makes me feel good. So, but we discover we're united to our divine mind, and some say our Christ mind, and it doesn't matter really what you say. But as Jesus exemplified this from our union with our divine mind, what we speak is powerful. And that's what Canaan speaks about, is something powerful, speaking something powerful, because we're in this balanced energy state as Jesus was. And so Jesus functioned very powerfully there. And jumping ahead of myself, but just making water into wine, really, what did that do for me? And that's what we got to understand when we're going through these stories. How does this apply to my life? What does this do for me? Mm-hmm. It's like we've said in the Old Outlook books, the Old Testament books. What do those stories do for me? When they circumcised all the men and they killed all these people and all the stuff they did, how does that apply to my life? And that's why we really need the spiritual understanding of the Word. And yet people resist it over and over and over. And so Galilee then is associated with mountain. In Matthew 28:16 and 17, it talks about a mountain. And that symbolizes a high consciousness of life, a high consciousness of life. So science tells us that this Galilee consciousness exists everywhere as an interpenetrating atmosphere. And Jesus called it the kingdom of the heavens. And the kingdom of the heavens, or the kingdom of heaven, or the kingdom of God is everywhere that there's life. And of course, the kingdom of God it says it's righteousness, peace, and joy in your spirit. It comes from your spirit. And when you know that you're spirit, then you know you're righteous, then you have the peace and joy from that. So the disciples represent this man's faculty, or the faculty, if you would, of this high consciousness. And our work is to call attention to these faculties, to this kingdom of heaven within inside of us. So all of our life, we have looked without, right? We've always looked up. We still sometimes we still pray and we hold our hands up and we look up. And then sometimes it's okay, we pray on Friday nights for their friends and we always bow our head. And I always say, you don't need to bow your head. But if you want to bow your head, that's all right. Some people say it's a sign of respect, but Father is my Father. And I don't have to bow my head when I talk to my Father. And I don't have to look up when I talk to Father, because Father is within inside of me. And so really my speaking, it's like yesterday we prayed for one of our friends, Tammy. And immediately we started to do what we always do, is say Father and address Father and ask Father to do something. But I stopped myself and I just began to speak to Tammy. And I just reminded myself there's no distance in spirit, there's no distance in time. And so I just began to say, Tammy, I speak to you, and I speak to your body, and I speak to the doctors that's working on you. And that's really powerful that we can do that. And that's why we need to practice that more and more, and pay attention to what we are saying and correct ourselves. And so in the book of John, and I made a mistake when I first started this out. I said there's 8 signs, but there's actually 7. There's 7. And so there's 7 signs. So I'm going and I'm changing in all the writing. I'm taking the word miracle out of a lot of it. Some of it will be in the Bibles, the verses or whatever. But they're signs and they're events, and they're accredited to Jesus because they point to Jesus' divine identity. When you begin to do things in your life and help people and cause things to take place or whatever, then that points to your divine divinity. And if you're not doing those things, if you're not going forth blessing people, helping people, or whatever, you still have a divine a divinity. You still have that, but it's not functioning. And the reason we are divine, the reason we have this in our life is to function and go you into all the world, if you would. And Jesus said, make disciples of all men. Well, I want to make everybody a disciple of the Logos of the Word, because I know it's going to help them. Yes. And I say this all the time now, if you're been taught the Bible and it's not revealing abundant life to you, then you're not hearing the Logos, you're just hearing the Bible. So these 7 signs are not miracles. And I've got them listed for you. The first one is turning the water into wine. And you'll see in our teaching today that he did not turn the water into wine. That's going to be interesting for people. And then number 2 is healing the official sons. So the water to wine is John 2, 1 through 11. Healing the official son is John 4, 46 through 54. Healing the paralytic at the pool of Bethesda is John 5, 1 through 15. And you're going to discover there that whole narrative of an angel coming and stirring the water and all that is 9999 numbers. That did not happen. That did not happen at all. Well, first of all, we needed to ask, why would God say the first one gets in, gets healed?
I know.
I did too. I always wondered about it.
I always wondered that.
And the number 4 is feeding the 5,000 in John 6, 1 through 14. Number 5 is walking on water, John 6, 16 through 24. These are all in your notes. And healing the man born blind is John 9, 1 through 7. And then raising Lazarus from the dead is John 11, 1 through 44. So let's read John 2, 1 through 5. And the third day there was a marriage in Cana of Galilee, and the mother of Jesus was there. And both Jesus was called and his disciples to the marriage. And when they wanted wine, the mother of Jesus said to him, they have no wine. Jesus said to her, woman, what have I to do with you? Mine hour is not yet come. His mother said to the servants, whatsoever he saith to you, do it. You ever thought that was a weird story right there? You ever thought that was a kind of a rude way to talk to your mama? You know, we never think about, we read the Bible a lot, but we just never think about some stuff because we accept that's just the way it's always been said. But why would you say, mother, what have I to do with you? So I'm going to answer that question. Thanks for asking that. So John chapter 2, 1 through 4 of us is a story that holds several metaphysical interpretations. At its core, the story represents man's journey to transformation and their awareness and awakening in their heart awareness to that which is spiritual. So Jesus was called, and his 8 disciples to the marriage feast is an allegory of our divine faculties functioning together. They were all there together. And so when you do that, that's controlling your vibratory energies of your spirit, visible spirit. It's releasing it, if you would. So this harmonization is made possible when we consciously become one with the perfection and the pattern that Jesus laid out or exemplified in his life. So when our divine faculties and our power center functions properly, our heart awareness will quicken, if you would, within inside of us. It expands and it begins to radiate out to be a blessing to your world and blessing all around you. So our faculties, our power centers, are divine gifts that with potential, there's a potential there to engage a multitude of ways to aid other people in their spiritual development, because that's what we're being prepared for, is to aid other people. You know, we're not feeding for ourselves anymore. Everything I do, I want to share with other people. As I write in there, it's all I can do to just not stop and go post some of this on Facebook. And I've done that in the past because this is just too good. I want it out. I want people to hear this now. And so these divine gifts greatly help others, just as Jesus, Paul, and John, the other disciples, and many comforter messengers have in the past and the present. They're helping other people. And so these faculties are, and I've read them to you before, their faith, their strength, their godly judgment, So I'll go slow if you're taking notes. They're faith, and we say faith in Father is faith in us. Strength, godly judgment, love, power, understanding, I'm getting warm, I'm sorry, will, and order. And each one of these correlate with one of the disciples' names. Each one of them represents those. Like, who would you guess represents love? John, right?
Yes.
If you were here a week or so ago, I corrected the verse where it said the disciple that Jesus loved. It actually says John loved Jesus. And they switched that around there. So they symbolize this in the first 12 disciples here. So the story takes place at a wedding, which usually symbolizes the beginning of a new journey. You know, every one of you have been married in here. I've been married. And when we got married, it was a new journey. And we were so excited. And we thought about the future, how the future was going to hold. And like I've told y'all before, the minute I said I do to Donna, she had already figured out 3 children who were going to be coming very quickly. She wanted a baby so fast. I always joked that when I said I do, I said, you can get pregnant now. But she had her life figured out, what she wanted. And so it's a new journey. It's a union it's a union of 2 consciousness. When I did the wedding ceremony for Allison and Stephen, I talked about that it's a union of 2 consciousnesses coming together. But in this spiritual wedding, or coming together spiritually, it's a union with our consciousness and Father's consciousness, to where Father's consciousness literally envelops our heart awareness in every part of our being. And we change our awareness. So a marriage can also symbolize a seemingly religious and spiritual thought activity in consciousness that seeks to unify with a greater spiritual awareness. There again, sometimes a man or a woman can be in not a good life situation, not much finances or whatever, and they're getting ready to marry somebody that wants to take care of them and bless them, and they have the means to do that. So there's this union where they have a better life. And so we see that particularly in our consciously accepting our union with Father, because when we do that, we will have a better life and better understanding. And so in the book of Isaiah, chapter 6:24, we find a land titled Beulah. Do you remember a song called Beulah Land? You know, the minute I looked that up, I immediately remembered that. And so in my spiritual youth, we sang a song titled Beulah Land. Some of the lyrics were, I am kind of homesick for a country to which I've never been before. No sad goodbyes will be spoken there, and time will no longer matter. We were longing for Beulah Land, not knowing that we already had that all that belonged to us. And so the lyrics went on to finally make it to Beulah Land, and they took their heavenly flight to someday Beulah Land, which would be their home for eternity. And so we sang lots of songs like that, didn't we? Putting everything off in the future. So Beulah is a Hebrew title that means married. That means married. And so literally I could say that we long for something that we didn't know that we had, that we are married to our Father. We are one with our Father. And Beulah is a Hebrew title that means that. So we were singing a song which really was a plea to experience our union with our divine mind, our marriage, our oneness with our divine mind and being Father. So the metaphysical understanding of this marriage we have with Father is this rich, happy state of the individual who has entered into this consciousness that we are one with Father. And again, when that happens, hi Larry, when that happens, I got you, didn't I? Natasha turned to look at you, Larry. But this raises our whole consciousness to a complete oneness. And then we understand I will be, when God said I am that I am, or exist that I exist. I pointed this last week. One of the deeper Hebrew meanings of that is I will be there whosoever I will be. Isn't that interesting? I will be there whosoever I will be. So we can say, I was talking to Kay last night, we can say, Father said, I will be there in Roy Richmond. I will be there in Kay Fairchild, or whosoever I will be. That's what he was actually saying. I'm taking a course from Hillsdale College, and just for the fun of it and learning what these people are teaching and going through Genesis, this Hebrew professor explained this, and I thought, wow, that's awesome. Mm-hmm. So, I say it means, in the first Hebrew meaning is I exist that I exist. And so I always thought it meant I will exist whatever I need to exist at, but he exists as us. Mm-hmm. And so I will be there whosoever I will be. So often, comforter messengers come into people's life with a real message to help them, but the problem is there is no thirst there. There is no desire in that person's life for a relationship with the messenger or any messenger, and they lose out on what was to be revealed to them. So the conscious union between spirit and our heart awareness is it's a silent flow of substance in our life that we have to be sensitive to and have to desire. And that's that union between man and God. And most of my life in church, I never really heard about that. I always worshiped a God a long ways off. And even Jesus was a long ways off. And so a thirst for things, a spirit is necessary. I'm getting to our subject because they began where they didn't think they had any wine. And there was a thirst there. But the first thing we have to do is have a thirst for things. The Bible says God is spirit, and they that ascertain and seek and desire to know Father must do so in spirit and in truth. So you've got to have a thirst for truth. You've got to have a thirst to understand what spirit really is and who I am. And then that turns into a thirst to give it out to other people. And so we also speak of a marriage as the lifting up or unifying of wisdom and love in our individual consciousness. When this spiritual marriage takes place, this condition that we will experience then would be blessed, rich, and full. So a real marriage is that which results from an awareness of that union of man and spirit both being one. When you really know that, you realize that you are blessed beyond imagination. You are rich and you are full. I was talking to, is it Mallory that's coming now to play cards with us? Valerie, while y'all were putting the flag up. And she was telling me she was amazed that me and Don had come out there, and we've been doing this for that many years, driving that way. And she said, these people are really rich. And I thought for a minute, what do you mean really rich? Because I'm thinking about money or whatever. But she actually said they're rich with spirit. They're rich with love. The way she explained it was exactly what this is: blessed, rich, and full. And I like being around people who know they're blessed and they're rich and they're full and they radiate life. So the real marriage is that which results there, and it helps us to understand our oneness. And that's when we eat the heavenly manna and we drink the living waters of the Logos, which is the creative spiritual activity that reveals the spiritual law of abundant life. So that's why I said earlier, Jesus did not have them put, I'm way ahead of myself, but he did not have them put water in those stone vessels and then turn it into wine. It didn't happen. And I'm just kind of baiting you to be ready for it when I tell you. So wine or water symbolizes the vitality that connects our heart awareness. Because we're looking at the spiritual picture of this. Wines or water symbolizes the vitality that connects our heart awareness and our divine mind. So it represents this pervading free essence that is generated from our nerve substance of water life within inside of us even. So the wine of life, the vitality of the visible spirit, it must be available in large quantities for this blending of this big wedding that they're going to. But it needs to be in us too. Our body cannot exist without water, right? What do they say it is? 93% something of our entire body is water. So water is valuable. Water is important for us. So when the Logos lives come into awareness, where old beliefs concerning that we've been holding, they begin to go away. The whole being begins to shine forth to its native spiritual perfection, our original formation. We begin to shine forth for that. So when we fail to acknowledge the divinity in us, which is the wine, then the wine is gone. And that's part of that picture there, that the wine is gone. They had run out of wine. And so our divine mind, if you would, we sense a disconnect there because the water or the Logos in many people's life is not present in their understanding. And so they feel a lack all their life. When we went to church, we always came needing something. The majority of people did. The prayer lines was because they felt that they need something. Then we wanted revivals because revivals made us feel better. But when the revival was over, we sank right back in. And it left a lingering emptiness and a dissatisfaction within our lives. And that's what "we are out of wine" means. We're out of water. We're not in tune with the Logos of the Word. And the Bible talks over and over and over about the water of life and springs of living water and spring up, O well within my soul. It's over and over and over. So Mary, his mother, represents the divine feminine, which is the left brain. And she recognizes this and she asks Jesus, the right brain, to restore the wine. And verse 3 uses the phrase, when they wanted wine. So the phrase "when they wanted" comes from the Greek hysterio, which means to fall short or to be deficient. So where could we fall short and be deficient? It's the Logos of the Word. And most of us were there all of our life. We really never heard the Logos. We never heard this creative activity that was alive within inside of us that would reveal the law of the abundant life inside of us. And so I was always trying to earn abundant life. I didn't know I had abundant life. And religiosity took advantage of that, so they came up with ways of getting it, which is pay more tithe, do more works, fast, pray, all the stuff that we were taught to do.
It's just who you are. It's just who you be.
It's who you be. It's like Brother Garner said, just be who you be. But we really didn't know who we be yet.
No, we had to learn.
So this would cause people then to fall short of vitality, which forms this link between the divine mind and our heart awareness. And so their having no wine is that they were not yet able to handle or possess their wine, because we all have the water of life within inside of us. We all have the divine life. So they were not able to possess the life or vitality of their visible spirit. And so we talk about how we're spirit slowed down the visibility. I also say visible spirit. So why aren't we experiencing it? Why don't people see it in us? Because we haven't been to this place where we can handle and possess. And that's what it means when it says have. Have you received spirit since you believed? That's what the disciples asked people later on. And he didn't say, have you received the infilling of it? It said, have you learned to handle your spirit since you believed? And they said, we never knew there was such a thing. And then they instructed them in that. And that's what the church world desperately needs, is people to teach people how to live out their spiritual resources. And we have 2 books that can help you with that, by the way. So Jesus here is getting ready to reveal a spiritual truth. He's not there just to give them something. And sadly, most of his ministry, all people wanted from him was something or some healing or whatever. And so Jesus said to his mother, woman, in the King James, verse 4, in the King James Version, what have I to do with you? And that's always been harsh to me. I always thought that was harsh. If Donna asked me to do something for y'all, and I said, Donna, what do I have to do with you? Or what do I, what is this we could say, what is this your business or whatever. It just wasn't a nice way to talk to mama or anybody else. So something had to be wrong with it. So I checked it in the Greek last night and discovered that is not the correct translation. The Greek states, then saith herself. It's a reflexive pronoun. Then saith herself, Jesus, what do you want me to do? And Jesus said, it's not my turn yet. That's what was said. So then we think, well, what do you mean it's not my turn yet? So I went to one of my commentaries, an Aramaic commentary, and according to the commentary, neither Jesus nor Mary talked with each other while they were at this event. If you know anything about Jewish history and all that, women didn't sit where men sat. right? Remember when they went to church, the synagogue, women were on one side, men were on the other side. One time there was a place where the women were talking to their husbands and asking their husbands this or that. And they asked Paul, what should we do about this? And said, tell your wife to ask you when she gets home. Because they were, women were ignorant then. It's not their own fault, but they were kept ignorant. And so this history, I'm going to talk to you about this history of this event, how Mary was sitting across from Jesus, not being able to speak to him. And this rendering is more expressive of Semitic language, S-E-M-I-T-I-C. It's a kind of an Eastern language. And this is a story about an Eastern wedding custom. And the phrase indicates this is not our concern, mother. It's not my turn to buy the wedding wine. The men took turns buying the wedding wine. And so Jesus was not rebuking her, nor did he speak harshly to her, as the King James Version implies. In Aramaic, the term atta, A-T-T, or woman, is a polite word. It's respectful. It's kind of like saying madame. That's what it was. So the Aramaic shah, S-H-A, means our time or our turn. So in this passage, it's not my turn. So when Jesus replied to his mother, he was referring to the custom that male celebrants would bring wine to the feast to keep it flowing to the guests. And keeping the wine flowing is especially necessary for a poor man's feast because a lot of the poor people didn't have the funds to buy enough to take care of everybody that was coming. So keeping the wine flowing was important. So according to the commentary of Lamsa, L-A-M-S-A, Lamsa, at a celebration, men sat on the floor in a line according to their age and social standing. The rich, the honorable, and the noble are all set in high places. The poor and least important are set in lower places. Both the poor and the rich may drink, both the poor and the rich and the honorable were all in that high places. So the poor and the rich can drink and they can rejoice, but the women are sat on the floor on the opposite side of a circle, if you would. Kay just pointed out that the word for woman was an endearment term, the way he said that. The sha'ah, it's an endearing term on there. So also there were musicians and there were servants that occupied the position near the door. And the women again sat on the floor, but on the opposite side of the circle. And then the bridegroom is responsible for supplying the food of the feast, unless, again, they're poor. So neighbors bring favorite prepared dishes and gifts for the bridal couple. And you could see women, it says there, they were coming in and out with trays on their head with food on them. It's kind of the way the wedding supper would be. And so, as was mentioned, the wine is provided by the male guests. So everything is done on a liberal scale. Guests take turns signing the servants to procure the wine for the party. So if it would have been Jesus' turn, he would have motioned to the servants to bring his wine. So servants pour the wine, and they serve the wine, and then they mention the name of the guest that brought the wine. So women did not drink at the weddings. Isn't that sad? Women did not drink at the weddings, but they sat there and they watched their husbands, they watched their sons enjoy themselves. And these women would be hurt if the name of their husband or their son was not announced. So you could tell Mary was looking forward to Jesus to being announced. And so at the wedding, Mary fastened her eyes on her son as they sat there with a group of women. And she probably was kind of making looks at him like, is it your turn? Is it your turn? And most of the people there would be kind of well drunk, if you would. The spiritual leaders, the holy men, they did not drink. So probably the servants were standing idle, if you would, according to the Aramaic text. And Mary just kept thinking, you guys need to be doing something. It's Jesus' turn. So her facial expression And Esther said, they have no wine. Do you want me to do something? That's what she was kind of saying. Do you want me to do something? Is it your part now? That's kind of what they're saying that she was doing. And Jesus responded with a gesture, or maybe with his face or his hand, that his turn has not yet come. And so Mary, wanting it done, turned to her servants, or his servants, and said, listen to him, and when he tells you to do something, do it. Because she was anxious for it, if you would. So John 2:6, and there were set there 6 water pots of stone, after the manner of the purifying of the Jews, containing 2 or 3 firkins apiece. Carl, you can explain what measurement that is to us, firkins. That's an amount. So I didn't look that up. But Jesus said to them, fill the water pots with water. And they filled them to the brim, and he saith to them, draw out now, and bear the governor of the feast, and they bear it. So according to Lamsa, when the wine began to decrease, Jesus did not order wine or pray over the jars to change the water to wine. He didn't do that. He requested the servants to give the guests water, which according to the chief guest, tasted the best of all other drinks. And so Jesus never claimed in his ministry that he changed the water into wine. He never said a word about it. So when John the Baptist sent messengers to Jesus when he was in prison, he wanted to know if he was the one. And Jesus answered, he just said, go and describe to John the things that you see and hear. The blind see, the lame walk, the lepers are clean, the deaf hear, and the dead rise up, and the poor are given hope. Jesus did not say, yes, I am the miracle worker. He never pointed to himself that he was a miracle worker, or that he was even there to perform miracles. It was them that wanted the miracles. So Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, I think later they learned a lot more from Jesus, but I think in their writings they interjected a lot of things that were not necessarily true. And they would call them miracles because they didn't understand that it's something that's just normal. Does that make sense? So Jesus did not tell them that. So verse 9, when the root of the feast had tasted the water that was made wine, and this is John interjecting this into the story here, and knew not whence it was, but the servants which drew the water knew. They knew it was water. The governor of the feast called the bridegroom and said to him, every man at the beginning doth set forth good wine, and when man hath well drunk, then that which is worse, but thou hast kept the good wine until now. So the good wine was the living water. I agree with this. I do not believe he turned it into wine, because their water was good. It was good. Water was refreshing. The living water symbolizes wisdom and spiritual life and truth. That's what we see through this as an allegory or metaphysically or whatever you want to call it, which when partaken by man, it really intoxicates or paralyzes or paralyzes the lower awareness, and then it brings joy and satisfaction to the heart awareness. And again, when you're listening to the Logos, when you're listening to spiritual truth, then it paralyzes that low awareness that you've been bound with all your life. Right? So King David wrote, and wine that makes glad the heart awareness of man. And then Phileo, let me put something on here for me real quick. And then Phileo spoke of the wine of the divine love of God. That the wine is the divine love of God. And then a man named Meyer wrote, wine is the mysterious vitality and spiritual energy of all formed things. Well, what is that? That's water, is it not? I don't have wine inside my body. Wine is not my source, but water is. And then a man named Swedenborg wrote, wine signifies holy truth or true from the good of love. True from the good of love. And so this writing in the book of John takes place roughly 40 to 45 years after Jesus did this. And again, the writer statement, and when the chief guest tasted the water that had wine, John wrote this as a first miracle, believing that Jesus turned it into wine when it was actually water. It was water. So he showed his glory is what he did. I'm trying to think something I want to say. Okay, so all are based solely, everything in here is based solely on the remarks of the chief guest, not by Jesus. The chief guest thought that it was something special because it tasted so good. And the truth is, water is the most precious liquid in the world. And those people cherished their water. And so literally he served them water, but the spiritual aspect is he served them the water of the word. So people, Jesus had divine power, but he did not serve more wine to them because they already had wine. They already had plenty of wine, if you would. But he served water, and water is a sign, if you would, that he was there to bring the living word. That's the sign. Wasn't a miracle, but there was a sign there that he was there to bring the living word, and our living word that was there was going to be a living word that would bring life, would bring abundance if received. It has to be received, and it has to be handled. So we find in John 6:34, which we'll see a few months from now, to whoever has faith in what I'm here to teach and entrust their spiritual well-being to, these truths I teach, they will never thirst for it. The water I give, there it is. He doesn't give wine. The water I give, which is the water of the living Logos, the creative spiritual activity that reveals the abundant life. That's the water he gives. Yes. And that's the water he was giving there. Does that make sense? So all my life I was taught that he turned the water into wine. And there's more to it here, so let me get through it here. I don't have that much more to go, I don't think. I got plenty of time though. So sign number one. This beginning signs of Jesus' divinity and character records the dawning of the supremacy of Jesus' teachings and dealing with people in love as he sought to adjust these various planes of awareness. That people had all kinds of awareness in that crowd. The Jews had theirs, the Pharisees had theirs, the Sadducees had theirs, the Essenes had theirs, but there were other people there. There were other religions in that crowd of people. And so his job was to adjust their awareness and bring them up to a higher awareness of who they were and what they were missing out on. So this first sign of Jesus' ministry mentioned in John chapter 1 is that he would serve all who hungered and thirst living water. Anyone that would come, they would receive this living water that was served at that banquet. And of course, yes, there was physical water there, but it represented living spiritual water. So when you meditatively eat the bread and drink the water of the living word, we appropriate this imperishable substance. It's always with us. It doesn't perish. That's to drink the waters of eternal life. And so Jesus told the woman at the well that if she asked, he would give her living water. You know, that scenario where he comes and meets her at the well. He also spoke of those who entrusted their spiritual well-being to what he teaches. He said, out of your belly will flow torrents of living water. It says rivers, but it's actually torrents of living water. So what do? We trust our spiritual well-being to what Jesus taught. And we got to understand what he taught. So to freely drink this living water, we can recognize a need for transformation in our awareness, not in our being, because we are already who we be, if you would, like Donna said. But there's a transformation that takes place in our awareness, and it can be challenging to let go of that. All the patterns and the beliefs and everything that we've embraced in the past, it's very challenging to let go of it. And people are struggling. We call this question our theology. It's very hard for people to do that. I talk to hundreds of people literally every month on Facebook or write them, they call or whatever, and they're asking me questions, but if they're not questioning their theology, it doesn't do me any good to answer the questions. And the problem is, when Jesus came, there was very few people who were questioning their theology. Of course, the Pharisees weren't, the Sadducees weren't, but the people were hungry for anything that was going to bring them more life than what the Mosaic law did for them and all the other 800 and something laws that they came across with. So partly they will not embrace the truth that makes them free because of their fear of rejection. They're afraid of their family rejecting them, or afraid of their church group rejecting them, rejecting their friends. I've got several people that I'm mentoring, and they talk about it all the time. They're very lonely. They've had to pull out and not necessarily leave their mom or dad or their brothers or sisters or whatever, but they can't even post things on Facebook because they're going to reject them. And so that's a tough thing, but we have to kind of give up mother, father, brother, and sister for the gospel's sake. That doesn't mean they're not my mom. That doesn't mean I'm not going to love them. But what that means to me is I'm not going to give up my seed, because my seed is rest. I've entered into a rest, and I'm not getting out of this rest anymore. I'm not going back to that stuff that drug me down all the time. But it is hard. So their old wine does not suffice for them, yet they're not yet thirsty enough for this new freshening wine. You know, in the Bible where it says Jesus said, "I make all things new," that word "new" means freshen up. He didn't make us new, but he's freshening us up with a new understanding. You know, sometimes I don't wash my pillow all the time, but sometimes I need to just freshen it up. So I put it in a dryer, and it goes around and around and around and around, and gets steam in it, and it freshens it up. So sometimes the freshening process is not real easy because they're letting go of a lot of old stuff. So the old wine does not suffice because they're not thirsty. But then I found in Revelation 22:17, he that will, let him take the water of life freely. You have to want to. We used to sing a song at Valerie Robinson's church. You got to have the want to. So, but if you won't, then you're not going to partake of that water of life freely. So, allegorically speaking, water represents life, light, and truth that comes from the Logos. The life, light, and truth. So interesting that depending on how it's used in speech, wine can also symbolize that which is polluted. And what would be polluted? We can be polluted by traditions of men and by religiosity. Because I was looking up some places in one of my dictionaries about wine, and it just said polluted and said all kinds of stuff, and I thought, what? But that's what it is. If it's the wine of religiosity, it pollutes you. If it's the wine of traditions, it pollutes you. And now, in the last verse, this was inspired by the governor of the feast. John said, "This beginning of miracles did Jesus do in Cana of Galilee, and manifested forth his strength, his honor, and the view and perception of God originating from God and his disciples believed on him." But the word miracle did not belong there. It was a sign. It was a sign. But John felt like he had done a miracle. So this incident in John 2:11 has a spiritual significance for us. Jesus' teachings was the best the Galileans ever heard. They had never heard anything like this in their life. He solved this shortage of wine by giving them water and offering it to the guests, water, and that quenched their thirst. You know, have you ever? I've drank some alcohol in my life. I've had wine. I've had a few mixed drinks or whatever. But when I drank the water, it was much better. Would you agree? I mean, Donna can tell you all the time. I'll drink a nice glass of water, and I say, I love water so much. It tastes so good.
It's refreshing.
It's refreshing. And I think this is that picture that Jesus showed. I really believe he did not serve wine. I believe he served water to them to show them that water is much better than wine. In other words, this religious stuff that's been given to you and all this stuff, but this is the water of life. And see, before this time, the people of Galilee had been governed by manufactured traditions, but from now on, if they listened, they were going to hear what Jesus' teachings would govern their life. And Jesus' wine was the truth. Jesus' wine was the inspiration, the water of the Word, the wine of God, if you would. So then water in pots represent the transformation of lower consciousness into higher consciousness. These were just stony pots, if you would. And that's kind of, the rain's coming again.
Oh, yeah.
Wow. So in other words, he was showing a picture of we are earthen vessels, right? The Apostle Paul says we're earthen vessels. So he was showing there a picture of the water of the Word flowing into earthen vessels. And that removes all the religiosity and the traditions of man. And we have this signifies an awakening of our true nature, which we can access anytime we want if we will surrender to the alignment of our divine mind. And again, sometimes we have to practice that, and have to listen to ourselves and correct ourselves and cast down vain imaginations. So this metaphysical understanding, a sign is often viewed as an extraordinary or supernatural occurrence that defies the laws of physical experience. In other words, signs are believed to be a manifestation of divine intervention or spiritual power that transcends our physical reality, if you would. And so the signs that go so far in convincing one's unbelieving thoughts, they're transformative, and they result in believing, midst in believing thoughts that come from the true Word of God. Believing thoughts, what you think on, what you dwell on, they come from the true living Word of God. So signs that point to spiritual truth are events that happen externally, and they represent this shift of consciousness in our awareness. So the spiritual truths then are seen as opportunities for us to grow, for healing in our awareness, for spiritual awakening, and they can be considered a sign that our source or Father or divine mind, whatever, is supporting us and guiding us to this fullness of the Logos. And so, like Brother Garner used to talk about signs, the Bible is full of signs. In the book of Revelation, it says signified. We called it signified. Signs point you to something, so you don't camp out at the sign, you camp out at what it points to. So as we go through the Bible and we study the Bible, and we study all these different signs, which were called miracles, we want to look at what they pointed to, not what they necessarily were. Does that make sense? So anybody have a question on any of this, or do you get it? So it wasn't wine, it was water, and the water was refreshing, and the chief of the marriage feast recognized that it was better than the wine that they were served. But then John interjects his belief that it was a miracle, and he turned the water into wine. All right? So we're going to see more and more of this as we go in all these other steps. And what's happening with me as I study, I get more revelation, so I had to go back into the beginning of this and start changing some things of what I taught already. Like when I said miracles and things like that. But they're not miracles, they're just everyday happenings from a person that's tapped into the divine mind. And they know who they are, and they're able to bless people that way. Amen? Amen. All right. Thank you for being here. Hi, Marty. Glad you're with us today. As I always tell people, if you are looking for any of my resources, you can go get Dr. Roy E. as in Edward Richmond.com, and you can find everything that's available to you. And I appreciate you guys that are buying my books. Several days I've walked in there, and there's been 6 or 7 books bought by one person. So that brings me great joy. So I love you very much. You're welcome, Kay. Look forward to hearing you this evening. Bye-bye.